Let's see if this is working. Come on. Okay, well, maybe it's not going to work. All right. Let's try it. All right, so on when did we see each other last? Friday. On Friday, oh yeah, I drew this. Even the maintenance staff didn't want to erase this because they know greatness. Oh man, especially the stick figures are especially important here. All right, good. We talked about all that. So I'm gonna have to erase it though. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. You got a picture of it, I'm sure. Posterity's sake. All right, so as we kind of work our way back to understanding this, which gives us a pretty good window into understanding Plato, through the things we're going to talk about. We had one of the things that Socrates focuses on is the soul. It's how can we improve the soul? How can we make the soul healthy and flourishing, as Socrates put it. So Plato has more to say about the soul, and he refers to the soul as the tripartite soul. Tripartite soul is a fancy way of saying the three-part soul. Tripart. And meaning that there are three parts to our soul, of course. There are, well, our soul's not kind of unidimensional, but there are these different parts of it. They are reason. Yeah, I'll talk about issues in a minute. Reason. Then we have what's in the Republic referred to as the spirited element of our soul. And then we have appetite and desire. Reason, spirited element, appetite and desire. Appetite and desire we'll start with first. Appetite and desire is there is a hierarchy here, and I put them in that order, but I'll show you kind of how that works in a second. Appetite and desire are our bodily desires, our bodily needs, and those consist of food, drink, and sex. says Plato. All right. All three of these levels, although some are more important than others, none of them are to be neglected. I'll keep saying that. But yeah, we obviously have food, drink, sex is a desire, appetite, maybe for food and drink. But that's what we're talking about here. It's the lowest level, of the soul and all that, although, again, not to be neglected. The spirited element consists of our emotional drive. So this would be all of our emotions, positive and negative. I made a list here of things that it includes. Let's see here. Yeah, things like courage and cowardice, things like ambition, things like anger, happiness, any emotion that you might have, sadness, happiness, any emotion. This is part of our emotional drive, and this is part of our soul as we know it. Aggression, pride, even protectiveness, whatever kind of kicks in. Maybe a lot of primal type things here too, that may be important. A lot of things Plato focuses on, I would say, are more kind of primal, not urges necessarily, but responses, instinctual type responses. All that in the spirited element. And then we have reason, which this is what sets us apart. Reason is what Plato says sets us apart from other living things, other animals, let's say at least. Reason, this is where we use language. Think about rationalism, using language to understand things. Use language to be able to reason. And this sets us apart, according to Plato, from other animals, other living things, that, we're able to hear something, synthesize that material, apply it to our own situation, or figure out that maybe I shouldn't apply it to my own situation, whatever it is. Our ability to use language and to reason things through. And reason is the most important of the three the three parts of the soul. I did an experiment in middle school. It wasn't really like a science fair thing, but we had to come up with our own experiment, I guess. And I put a house plant next to a radio that played rock and roll music. KMOD, I think, was the channel. There was more kind of album rock back then. And I put another house plant next to a radio that played classical music. And my hypothesis is that the two plants, or one of the two, would grow closer to the radio playing the classical music. It would grow away from the radio playing rock and roll music. It was not a very good experiment in its structure. I didn't have like a control group or anything like that, or a plant with no radio or that kind of important stuff. In fact, the plant did grow towards the radio that played classical and grew away from the one that played rock and roll. But nobody was knocking down my door to like publish about this or anything, It wasn't like that. It was apparently I didn't have the most rigorous standards of empirical method or anything like that going on. I don't know. Did the plant reason its way? Like, we're going to go this way, yeah? Like there was some kind of a decision made within the DNA of the plant to, I don't really like Led Zeppelin that much. I'm going to move away this way. Oh, Mozart. Let's move closer to the music. That was kind of my thinking, but oh well. Well, maybe we think some animals other than us use language. I think that's been somewhat established among some mammals in particular, other than humans, use language to communicate at least. Whether they use it to reason or not, I don't know. I don't know enough about that. Okay. So in this hierarchy, reason most important, our emotions second most important, and third most important is appetite and desire. But in this hierarchy, reason's kind of an umbrella over these other two here. That's an umbrella, by the way. And reason keeps in check these things. It also keeps in check that appetite and desire doesn't become, more important than our emotions. So it makes sure that 2 and 3 stay here. But it also keeps in check our emotions, that we don't get overly emotional, we don't get too angry, we don't get too aggressive, we don't get too prideful, we don't get, too anything. But it's kind of a tempering element there. And reason also keeps in check our need for food, drink, and sex, right? Now, obviously, sometimes these things get a little bit out of control. This is the perfect soul here, is that you have your soul operating at optimum capacity here. Reason, keeping in check our emotions, and then least important is making sure that appetite and desire don't get out of control. That'd be the best. But it's possible that you have a soul that is out of whack a little bit. Let's just say you have a bad day today. I'm sorry. And on the way home, you buy a couple of pound cakes and maybe a gallon of vitamin D milk, whole milk, like the wallpaper paste stuff, right? You can put wallpaper up with that. And you go home and you open up the pound cakes and you lay on the couch and you put on a couple of Lifetime movies and you just drink almost the whole gallon of milk and you eat 2 pound cakes. That would be 2 pounds of cake, I think. Am I doing the math right there? Is a pound cake, does it really weigh a pound? That seems like that should be right. It's different than baking. It's a baker's pound. It's still different. Well, so you're laying there, and of course you're watching a Lifetime movie, so you're crying and you're all emotional, and maybe there's some love involved, and you kind of get wrapped up in that for a minute, and then you cry again. And geez, I cry at Lifetime movies. I don't even have a pound cake, So you're laying there on the sofa, eating your pound cake, which is most important, crying your eyes out, and reason, of course, is just out the window. You're just, Could be the other way. It could be a 2-3-1 situation, right, where you are overeating or overdrinking, or overindulging in sex, for that matter, and your emotions are wrapped up, and again, reason's out the window. There's all kinds of options here, right? It could be a 1-3-2, right? Or maybe you come home angry and beat your children and beat your spouse, and you're still angry, and you start drinking, all right? It's more fun to talk, not more fun, but more interesting to talk about the ones where number 1 is on the bottom. That's where you just toss reason to the wind. There might be different reasons why people might be living this kind of out of balance soul. It could be some kind of mental disorder, it could be a addiction, it could be something else. But where reason just kind of gets tossed aside, and you're living a life that's not balanced. Plato calls this, if you're living this way, he calls this the justice of the soul. So within yourself, you're doing yourself justice if you live with your soul, with reason, keeping in check your emotions, and appetite and desire being kept in check as well. Okay. Well, what was the topic? That was the topic of the Republic. This is where this comes up, is in the Republic. And the question they were asking, remember Thrasymachus said, what is justice? And this is where this question comes up, this idea comes up. And they think, well, if that's true for the individual, if justice is found for the individual person with this kind of hierarchy, maybe we should base our republic on this individual plan, if that's where justice is. And that's what we're trying to find as we build this imaginary republic here. And so they begin to base, I'll call it kind of a caste system. I don't know what else to call it. But certainly a class society, a very strict class society. That, and so they're kind of taking this microcosm of the individual and making it a macrocosm of the, you know, the whole republic. And so they're going to have three groups of people. They correspond to the numbers here. Number 3, they're going to have the workers. Right, got to have workers. People got to get stuff done. Number 2, under spirited element, you're going to have soldiers or guardians. Guardians, G-U-A-R-D, is that right? It's funny, isn't it? G-U, that can all make it sound like gua, can it? Guano. I'm thinking bueno, sorry, bro. Because, you know how I like Taco Bueno. Trying to stay away from that. Soldiers, it's tough. Because I think they're sprinkling a little bit of crack in their food. Yeah, not enough to like almost really be detectable because they don't want to get in trouble. Yeah, exactly. Just a little bit, so that when you drive by and you don't want to go there, you like kind of get the shakes a little bit. Like, I don't know, burrito sounds okay. I'm just going to pull in there real quick. And yeah, but you don't realize you're addicted. But they got me. Oh, they got me. The guardians, the soldiers. You got people who are going to protect stuff. Talk about that. And reason will be represented by the rulers, or not in the book, but later referred to as the philosopher kings. So if you're a philosopher trying to make a utopia, who are you going to put in charge? The philosophers, of course. That's who's going to run things. They're the smart ones, the rulers. Good. Well, let's talk about the workers. The workers actually have the kind of the most normal life, I guess comparable to how we live. The workers can own property. I'm going to put number 3 over here again. Can own property. They have jobs, of course. They're workers. They earn money. They are allowed to marry and have children. Good. There's other restrictions on the workers. I guess the workers are supposed to dress very modestly, only wear solid color clothing, right? No jewelry, nothing flashy, almost kind of Amish sounding the way they describe it in the Republic. Some other things like that. And the guardians, not to jump to them, but the guardians are keeping an eye on the workers. So there's an internal threat, possible threat within the Republic, because Plato says that the workers, or appetite and desire, thus the workers, that they're naturally unruly, and they need to be kept in line. So the rulers, the guardians, again, have an internal threat they're watching, and also looking out for external threats as well. So that's their life. The guardians do not marry. They don't have money. They don't get paid anything. They live communally together. Men and women. Okay. They have to qualify. They have to, physically and all things be able to do this. And they they're not married, but they do have children, but they have children on a prearranged, or they should say they mate on a prearranged schedule. Twice a year, there will be a mating festival, and they'll be told with whom to mate. And now there's one more little thing here. The rulers are involved in this mating festival as well, not just in the decision making of who with whom, but they're also mating together with the soldiers and guardians. So that's the same thing. But the rulers and guardians are mating together. The soldiers and guardians have obviously a closer relationship with each other than the workers have with anybody else. So prearranged schedule, mating festivals twice a year. And someone's keeping track of all this because they know that if two guardians mate together, then the offspring from that union is going to be a guardian. If two rulers mate together, the offspring will be a future ruler. But if a guardian and ruler mate together, which is possible, then they have to wait a little while to see, how that person kind of turns out. Are they guardian material or are they ruler material? And so they're talking about this, kind of setup here socially in their system. And one of the people asked, I think, a pretty natural question: how are we going to keep people in their place? Like, I know the guardians do their thing there, but how are we going to keep people from maybe being a little bit ambitious? Maybe a worker wants to be a guardian. Maybe a guardian thinks he's real smart. He wants to be a ruler. How are we going to keep people where they are? And Plato is saying this, although it looks like it's Socrates, like I keep saying that, and he says, well, we'll keep them in line. It's very out of character, for Socrates at least, though we know it's Plato there actually said it. We'll keep them in line by telling them a noble lie. Oh, wow. That's like an oxymoron. A noble lie. Lying is not in Socrates' vocabulary for himself. The noble lie is this: that when a worker is born, they are born with bronze in their system. And that never changes. They are always a worker. Bronze makes a worker. The soldiers are born with silver in their system. And silver, that cannot be changed. They will always be a soldier or guardian of their silver. And the rulers are born with, guess what? With what? Gold. I was wondering if this was part of the Olympics. This is set up, The rulers are born with gold in their system. That way, that's because when a guardian and ruler mate together, you got to wait a while to see if they have gold or silver in their system. This is not done by medical testing or by blood tests. No, it's just done by watching how they develop and what they, kind of turn out to be. Yeah, well, the guy asked the question back to Socrates. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. He says, do you think people will really go for that? Like they're going to buy into that, like bronze, silver, gold? And Plato says, maybe not at first, but after a couple of generations, they'll accept it as the truth. Oh, kind of disappointing for Socrates or Plato, either one taught that way. It's kind of a Joseph Goebbels propaganda rule. You know what I'm talking about? You know Joseph Goebbels? Anyone heard him before? Yeah? About it? Yeah, who's Joseph Goebbels? He was a Nazi, and what particular? Propaganda minister. Probably, I don't give much credit to Nazis, and I teach German, so take it for what it's worth, but I don't give any credit. But he probably was the best propaganda person, hands down, right? He got people around him also, and he had this kind of axiom that if you tell a lie enough times, it becomes the truth. That's Goebbels' kind of statement. Well, that's kind of what they're going with here. We'll just keep telling them, silver, bronze, gold, you can't move around. You are who you are. Sorry. All right. So that's your utopian republic here. the rulers, I'll say the rulers are, the best thing I can say about them, not the best thing, but the biggest thing is that they understand things, I'll say things, in an absolute way. In a way that Socrates and Plato would like to understand things. The way that they're seeking, the way that he keeps asking people questions and pushing and prodding and Socratic method and all that. But the rulers, though, have attained that level of perfect understanding. So they understand things in an absolute way. It's kind of strange because Plato and Socrates aren't even qualified to rule this republic. They haven't reached that level yet. But the rulers understand things in that way that Socrates would like to understand things. So their rulings about things and their decisions about things and their understanding of what's going on comes almost with a godlike type of wisdom. They have this kind of very deep and perfect understanding of the world and what's going on in their republic. And really their decisions are unquestionable because they have this kind of understanding that other people don't have. So it is a godlike level in a way, in that way. We normally don't think of anybody having kind of godlike understanding of the world and what's going on, other than God. Yeah, that's why we call it godlike. Okay. So the rulers then rule in basically kind of a perfect way. Yeah, well, not exactly democracy, is it, right? This is for people who are living in the cradle of democracy. As I said before, this is almost anti-democratic. Okay. Well, this idea of three-part, tripartite of different things, when it comes to the soul, it comes up at other times for Plato. He, or at least kind of an interdependence, I'll say, within us. There's another dialogue called Phaedrus, and in Phaedrus he tells a story about a chariot driver who's driving a chariot that has two horses pulling it, and the chariot driver has a whip, or prop, or I guess it would be a whip on a chariot, I don't know, and he's got the reins in his hands. And there's one horse who's always trying to pull the chariot off into the ditch or off the road and go a different direction than the way the chariot driver wants him to go. And he's constantly battling with this horse, like having to pull those reins harder and having to whip that horse more to keep it on the straight and on the path where they want to go. The other horse is struggling along with the chariot driver and also struggling along with the other horse, trying to pull the horse, back onto the road as it tries to pull the horse off the road. Of course, the chariot driver's working together with this horse here, and that horse, of course, is working against the other horse, just like the chariot driver. This is kind of, you can see the three levels there. You've got the chariot driver, let's just say the driver, would be the ruler, who works pretty close together with the good horse. They're working in tandem. And then you have the bad horse, who's naturally unruly, like the workers, like appetite and desire, trying to pull the chariot. This is one example of this kind of three-part idea of us as humans. Plato uses another example, which is not exactly a three-part, but shows kind of this kind of interdependence. So there is definitely although we'd probably like for the bad horse to be a good horse, that's what the other two are trying to do, trying to create. But he talks about our human body, our physical body, and he says that when one part of your physical body fails or is sick, that you go on living, but the rest of your body has to work harder, though. Your heart has to work harder. Let's just say one of your lungs is not working, right? Not working properly. your other lung has to work harder. And so does your heart, and probably a lot of other things I don't know about that go on. I'm sure your organs suffer in some way from not maybe getting as much oxygen as you were before. And there's just more strain put on the body because of that one part of the body that's suffering. This, by the way, I think it's pretty well believed that the Apostle Paul had studied these classic Greek philosophy, and he uses the same example in the New Testament. You know this, but he uses it in combination with the body of Christ, meaning the church, when I say that. The church, when one member of the church suffers, they have a loss, they have a death in the family, let's say, the whole church suffers along with them. The same way that within the body, when one part of the body is sick or is not functioning, the whole body suffers. And the same way is true in the body of Christ. Yeah, that's an interesting analogy. Again, there's a lot. I said it the other day. Senior thesis topic you're thinking about would be something here about, especially the Apostle Paul, but not just the Apostle Paul, and how much Platonic ideas, and that would come from Augustine, and again from the Apostle Paul primarily, but Augustine really develops a lot of that in a Platonic or Neoplatonic way, you would say. Good, so these other ideas here of three things, or interdependency of the human. Okay, got that already? Good, what time is it? What's that? 8:51. Is it really? Huh. Does that mean class is over in a minute? 9 minutes? 8:59? 8:51. Wow. Okay. Good. Well, another thing comes up in the Republic. We're going to work our way slowly back to the allegory of the cave. And that is what they call the theory of understanding. And it ties into the structure of the Republic as well as that allegory of the cave. Theory of understanding. Sometimes it's called theory of knowledge, but it depends on how it's translated, I guess. But theory of understanding. And he verbally usually if you read this in the Republic, there'll be a page that'll draw what I'm going to draw here. But verbally, he draws this out. And it's it's not a cave. This is pretty easy stuff here. It's just kind of a dividing line thing here. And there are 4 levels to understanding. 4 levels. 4. We'll start at the bottom and work our way up. The lowest level of understanding is what he calls conjecture and imaging. He talks more about imaging than any kind of conjecture. But what makes up imaging? Well, shadows, reflections, representations of things, art, which would be representations of things, symbols. I might come up with another here in a minute. All those things are images. Images of real things, maybe. Shadows don't just come out of nowhere. Shadows are shadows of being cast by something real. Reflections don't come from nowhere. Reflections are reflections of something that's real. So you see your face in some clear stream, and it's your reflection. It's not somebody else's reflection. It's not a reflection of something that's not there. It's a reflection of something that is there. Representations, like in a minute. Art, well, I paint a landscape. It's not like you're going to try to walk into that work of art, as realistic as you know it would be if I made it. you'd go, wow, but you wouldn't try to like walk into it to like be a part of it. It's not that real. It's just it's a work of art of that landscape. I am an accomplished sculptor. I'm joking, I don't know. Where's my laugh track? I keep threatening. But if I got a block of marble, you know, and I were able to, I could make a sculpture of Aiden, and you guys would come in here and it'd be so good, you'd be like, hey, that's Aiden, yeah? A lot of sculptures I'm not so sure about something like that. With mine, you would know, oh, that's Aiden. But you wouldn't walk up to it and start talking to it, you know, like it was Aiden. It's not that convincing. It's just we might call that a representation. We didn't have our not traditional kind of conventions this summer, Republican, Democrat convention. They usually happen all through the summer, every 4 years. But when they do happen in the normal way, maybe you remember 4 years ago, both sides do this. There's a lot of flag waving, yeah? A lot of Jumbotron televisions, you know, with like a bald eagle like flying across all three of them, you know, like goes from one TV to the next, you know. They play patriotic music, and they drop red, white, and blue balloons and red, white, and blue confetti. And if you watch, they'll pan the audience, the people down the floor, and they're in the audience. And there's people who are like crying, you know, or they're all, you know, riled up, you know, they're really excited. They're really proud at that moment. They're really patriotic at that moment. They're kind of enraptured almost at that moment, some people. So it really, all those things, but think about it though, all those things that are happening, the Jumbotron, bald eagle, that's all digital technology. We can explain that. It's not a bald eagle actually flying around. They're not going to set loose a bald eagle in the convention center. And the balloons, well, those are just made of latex and colored with some kind of dye. And the confetti, paper, again, colored paper. And the flags even are probably made of nylon, yeah? Just sewn together, yeah? Maybe made in China, I don't know. And the music, well, we know how music is made through instruments and whatever kind of instrument it is. But somehow, though, we put all that together, and all these symbols and these representations can move us emotionally, can make us feel overly patriotic, or make us feel very happy to the point of tears, you know, or proud to the point of tears, perhaps, of what's happening. But it happens on both sides. It's not a Democrat or Republican thing. They both do this, and they really, they kind of rely on this because they want to move you emotionally. They want to move you to action emotionally. And so the hope is that they'll kind of get you all riled up, like people in the convention center, wherever it is, are, and that you'll go to work for this candidate or you'll vote for this candidate. Well, yeah, but all those things, though, are just representations. Now, it's much more difficult to get somebody to get excited to that point about the real United States of America than it is to get somebody, and this is much more easier. This is much easier, sorry. Much easier to do. So let's say I showed a video of that and you're like, wow, yeah, so great to be an American, man. It's just I feel so like full of pride in my country, and I'm just bubbling over with it. And then I would come over here and say, yeah, okay, good. Let's just take a look out here. Yeah, there you go. There's America. Take a look. Part of it, but that's America. America's not a nylon flag. America's not latex balloons, is it? America's not confetti. America's not music. America's not a bald eagle. Here it is right here. I bet no one's gonna shed tears up here. No one's gonna get jumping up and down excited about the real thing. So Plato understands the power of representation, of symbols, of art even, Those things move people emotionally. And he doesn't think that they should. He doesn't think they should be a part of moving us in any way. So the idea of shadows, let that stick with you, because that was part of the allegory of the cave, right? Living in the bottom of the cave, that's all they knew were shadows. Okay. If you guys are fooling me, or it's about time to go. Now it's 8:59. All right. Jed, what did Coach Medina say to you the other day?
Unhappy words.
Yeah. As soon as it happened, I said, "Here comes Joe Medina." As soon as I saw you tackle him, I said, "Here we go. Here we go." Well, we'll see if this worked or not. Hey, quiz tomorrow. Don't forget quiz.